This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
This particular topic is directly correlated. There's a straight line to the work that I talk about, the work that I interview people about on this show. Because anytime there's a system at play that keeps us from feeling 100% safe in our wholeness, that means that it's a system that is preventing us from being the best version of ourselves. And that prevention can look a few different ways. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. All right, let's get into it. You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 697.
Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am so glad that you are here. Today's topic is one that I've been thinking about for a while, for a couple of years, a few years actually, more in the back of my head because I certainly wasn't ready to talk about it from a personal standpoint, giving you the example. And I needed to wrap my head around it in terms of do some research to be able to explain some terms to you and also point it in a direction that I want, because I always want to make sure that I give you solutions and not just problems, not just like here pointing out all of the problems. And so with that, I have done all the research and figured it all out and realized that this is going to be a 2-parter. I don't want to make this episode too long. And you all know me, I can tend to be a little verbose. And so I'm going to be as concise as possible. I have notes, I have good notes, and also it needed to be in 2 parts because of the length of it. That being said, the way I like to do things over here is every other week I do a solo episode. Next week will be a guest. So you are going to have to wait 2 weeks for the solution part of this podcast. And I also want to remind you that I have a new book coming out December 9th, Live Like You Give a Damn. So make sure you're on my email list. That's andreaowen.com/free. to make sure that you at least see it land in your inbox. So if there are time-sensitive things in there, you might want to open the email. I know that I get a lot of emails too. I get it. And the other thing is that I have some openings coming up this fall. If anyone is interested in doing some deeper work with me, it's a program I've called Devotion, and I've run with it with a few different clients, and it's been so incredibly amazing. And I'm ready to roll it out to everyone, as I think I've perfected it based on the feedback of some of my clients. So if you go to andreaowen.com/you, you can read a little bit more about it, fill out a quick application, and we can hop on the phone and see if it's a good fit for you. No pressure, no obligation, just an application and about 20 or 30 minutes of your time on a phone call with me. All right. Let's get into it. So both of these episodes are about decentering men. Part 1 is what it means and what it costs us. And part 2 is around how to stop self-abandoning, AKA what are the solutions? How do we stop centering men in our lives? And I want to say from the beginning, this is not at all about being angry at men or hating men or any of those things. If you have been around these parts for a while, you probably know that patriarchy hurts everyone. Patriarchy certainly hurts men as well. And so none of what I'm sharing here, none of what I share ever is about hating individual men or even just men as a group. This is about a cultural phenomena, if you will, cultural programming that we've all received growing up in these parts, and how it particularly harms women and what that means to us and how we can adjust our lives and do our own work in order to not have this harm us anymore. I think for many of us, this is where I'm going to start. I think for many of us, and this goes for any personal growth lesson, not just this particular one. You hear a term, and maybe even just the way the term is presented with the words that it has, you realize exactly what it is and that you struggle with this particular process, behavior, whatever. And other times you hear a term and then it kind of strikes your curiosity. You learn more about it and you're like, oh my God, this is me. How can I fix it? That happened when I first heard the term centering men and decentering men. And as I really got to know what it means, it was it was mildly horrifying and also not surprising to realize what I had pretty much done my whole life. So quick backstory. I really learned what patriarchy and misogyny and even what true feminism really is around 2009. So if y'all don't know how old I am, I was in let's say I would have been 34 then. So I was well into adulthood, and it really turned my life upside down in a good way. And in terms of decentering men and what that meant, that came later. That came years later. And the way that I really understood it was a simple metaphor. And that is if you look at it like the sun is a star that matters a lot to Earth, matters a whole lot, and the planets move around it. And if you look at it just as Earth, the Earth moves around the sun, right? The sun is the center. And what I realized is that I had been making men as a whole, especially if it was someone who was incredibly important to me, like a partner or a husband, I had made that person the sun in my life and created my entire life, my worth, how I felt completely about myself, the decisions that I was going to make in my life, everything orbited around this person. That person was the priority. Their thoughts, their opinions, their emotions, their life was more important than mine. And my real job was to, yes, live my own life and be happy in all of those things. But my top priority was making sure that I orbited around the sun, that the sun came first. And so the realization that I had been doing this my whole life was truly a smack in the face, and lots of emotions in that. Grief, anger, frustration. I went through the whole gamut of all of it. And my hope today is to talk to you about the subtle ways that this can impact us in our lives, the sneaky ways that it impacts us. And we can think that we are doing so much great work, and we are. We are doing so much great work. And yet, if this thing is still working, I'm using air quotes, in your life, it's a sneaky way that we will continue to self-abandon. And so I also want to say from the top that this is not necessarily, having to set boundaries with people in your life. You can really change your life in this regard just by understanding it and seeing how it plays out in your life and working to make some changes. By looking at this topic and understanding it, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to remove men from your life or have to leave your marriage or have to set boundaries. I just want to, if anybody out there is nervous listening to this, it doesn't necessarily have to be the case. My hope for you in this episode is to have you really start to see it if it's happening in your life and where it's happening in your life. A little bit more information about some really interesting topics and the names for them so that you can see other things play out in your life that are directly related to this, as well as why it matters to the work that we're doing in personal growth, whether it's my work or other personal growth work that you're doing. And so again, the next episode will be about solutions. So please stay tuned for that. I don't want you to think this is just, oh my God, more things that I have to hear about, Andrea. I know. Listen, girl, the world is on fire. It truly is. And I'm over here with you, just overstimulated to the gills, using dark humor to cope and just still doing the work, just still doing the work. So before I forget, if I haven't already mentioned it, my apologies if I'm repeating myself. The reason that what does this have to do with personal growth, right? Why am I bringing a very specific feminist theory really into personal growth? Here's the thing. This particular topic is directly correlated. There's a straight line to the work that I talk about, the work that I interview people about on this show. Because anytime there's a system at play that keeps us from feeling 100% safe in our wholeness, that means that it's a system that is preventing us from being the best version of ourselves. And that prevention can look a few different ways. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. All right, let's get into it. So there's a few terms that I'm going to kind of whip through. One of them, I'm going to link to an article that I thought was really interesting, but there's one particular term I'm going to go into a little bit more depth because I think it is very, very related to the work that we talk about over here. So the first term is androcentrism, and that is treating men as the default. There is a scholar named Charlotte Perkins Gilman. She et al. Wrote about and used the term androcentrism to describe cultures that prioritize male perspectives as the default, as quote unquote normal, and everything else is seen as a deviation. This is the big pattern behind my metaphor that I was using, that he, straw man person, is the sun, and we, the people around him, family, partner, whomever, revolve around that sun. And so someone named Simone de Beauvoir, I hope I'm pronouncing their name right, wrote about women as kind of quote unquote other, that men are always positioned as the subject. They are the essential, they are central to everything. And then women or any other gender are defined relative to men. They're the object, they're the other. This, historically, and it's been written about, that this particular model as social and cultural conditioning trains us to self-measure, to see ourselves through male eyes, through male attention, especially through male approval. And also one of my favorite books, The Heroine's Journey by Maureen Murdoch, and I'm trying to get an interview with her to come on the podcast. Her 10-point cycle that she has coined in what she calls the heroine's journey talks about this in the beginning, and is one of the first phases that all women go through when we learn to see ourselves through men's eyes. And then that will really lay a path for much of the rest of our life goes. So there's a really great New Yorker article that I'm going to link to in the show notes that Laura Mulvey wrote. And she talks about how the media trains all of us to look at women from a heterosexual male point of view. And when we do that from such a young age, again, this goes back to the training, it habituates self-objectification, and really it trains us to self-monitor constantly. And that is self-abandonment. That is classic setting us up to self-abandon when we are trained to look at our entire lives, how we view ourselves, what decisions to make through male perspective, through their lens. All right. So let's talk about patriarchal bargains, also known as patriarchal bargaining. When I first learned about this, it was such a huge eye-opener because I thought to myself, oh, this is why. Have you ever heard the argument where, let's say, I remember seeing an argument on Facebook, oh gosh, 10, 15 years ago, where I was really eyeball deep in learning about and studying the objectification of women in the media. I saw some men arguing in the comments saying, well, if she is okay with it. So the particular example that was being given was an advertisement. The people in the advertisement, it was men and women, and the women were clearly being objectified. It was women on leashes, and they were selling booze, I think. It was an alcohol ad. And the men in the comments were saying, but she said yes to it. Her talent agency said, we have this job for you. So they're basically blaming women for saying yes and saying, like, why didn't she just say no? As if that would have solved the problem. And so feminist scholar Denise Candioti, and I hope I'm pronouncing their name correctly, coined the term patriarchal bargains in 1988. And it refers to the strategies often, I think, if not always, unconscious, that women adopt in order to navigate, in order to survive, in order to even gain advantage within patriarchal systems. And so you see this playing out now in our political Yahoo that's happening here. I think that a good example of it, and this might piss some people off, is Erica Kirk. She is making a patriarchal bargain in order to gain an advantage and have her proximity to power be something that she has a financial advantage over. It's for economic status, for any kind of status, in order for her to survive, in order for her to get ahead, in order for her to get whatever it is that she wants. She is making a patriarchal bargain, and probably it's largely unconscious for her. To be fair, all of us have made patriarchal bargains. I'd still do it every day. We do it because we have to in order to survive. So the bargain essentially tells us, and we end up convincing ourselves, if I play by these rules, I get safety, I get approval, I get resources, I get love, I get survival, I get acceptance by other people. If I make this bargain, I potentially and probably get acceptance into a community that will ensure my safety. Like that's what we're doing. And so I say that last part this is the same thing I tell clients all the time when they're starting to realize all of these ways that they have self-abandoned, whether it's people pleasing or ignoring their intuition, even perfectionism, overachieving. I'm like, my dear, you have played by the rules in order to survive, in order to get where you are. So then there becomes like this weird liminal space when like we realize what we have been doing as self-abandonment, but also realize we oftentimes have to participate in the same system that is often making us sick, making us go against our values, etc. We also do this. We make a patriarchal bargain by being, quote unquote, the good girl, by not rocking the boat in relationships, by dimming our light, by dimming our ambition at work. So we're looked at as more likable. So we're not looked at as difficult. So we're not put into any boxes. It looks different depending on sexual orientation. It looks different depending on race. I cannot speak for them, but women of color, patriarchal bargains look more complicated for them. Once you open this door and take a look at it, it is pretty wild. And it's important because these are adaptive strategies. These are not some kind of evidence that we are weak or anything like that. And they often emerge from real constraints sometimes, like economic dependence, sometimes threat of rejection, sometimes from just cultural scripts that we're not even conscious of. And the cost of it, time and time again, whether it is conscious or unconscious, is self-abandonment, because we trade pieces of our whole self, of our true authentic self, in exchange for conditional safety. And to me, this is the whole concept and the whole idea of it. When I realized how it works and how it was manifesting in my own life and how it had manifested for decades, I was sick to my stomach, A, furious, B, and it comes with a lot of emotions. So if you're listening to this and if you're currently Googling patriarchal bargains and what it might look like in your life, give yourself lots and lots of grace. The last thing I want to say about that is these bargains help sort of reproduce patriarchy. It reinforces patriarchy, because when we comply, when women comply, it looks like the system is working. I'm using air quotes because it makes it look like the system is working. Okay, we're going to take a quick ad break, and when we get back, I'm going to give you some more examples of hopefully things that are relatable of how this might be working in your life. This show is sponsored by MIDI Health. Let's be real. Midlife healthcare for women, historically trash. If you've been told, like I have, it's just aging or you'll be fine when you're not sleeping, you're sweating through your sheets, or feeling like a stranger in your own body, you are very much not alone. Even today, 75% of women seeking menopause or perimenopause care are left untreated. That's not okay. But there's good news. It's time for MIDI. MIDI is a women's telehealth clinic founded by experts in midlife health, and they actually listen. You get one-on-one, face-to-face care tailored to your unique needs. And they're the only women's telehealth brand covered by major insurance, making expert care accessible and affordable. From hormone therapy to weight loss support and lifestyle coaching, MIDI has your back. Ready to feel your best and write your second act script? Visit joinmidi.com today to book your personalized, insurance-covered virtual visit. That's joinmidi.com. MIDI, the care women deserve.
ABC Wednesdays, Shifting Gears is back.
He has arisen.
Tim Allen and Kat Dennings return in television's #1 new comedy.
What?
With a star-studded premiere including Jenna Elfman, Nancy Travis, and...
Hey, buddy!
a big home improvement reunion.
Welcome.
Oh, boy.
That guy's a tool.
Shifting Gears, new Wednesdays, 8/7 Central on ABC, and stream on Hulu.
Your earbud fell in a coffee cup. You need a taco pick-me-up. When modern life gets rough, grab the timeless taste you love. Paso, the old El Paso.
All right, good times. Talking about patriarchal bargains. And here are some more examples. I try to give an example from like various parts of your life. So in dating and marriage, even long-term relationships, you might laugh off sexist jokes to keep the peace, or maybe you stay silent about your needs to avoid being called needy, or that, you don't want to be looked at as you have too many issues. You give your partner many, many excuses, even though you know in your intuition that you should probably go. That is a way that it shows up there. In the workplace, if you are avoiding leadership opportunities, or maybe you are dimming your light, softening your ideas so that you're not intimidating, so that you don't come across as too assertive or aggressive or someone who talks too much or just is too much in general. If it is in a family role, and this can be in a marriage or long-term relationship too, allowing the default to go to you in terms of any kind of labor, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, or any way that you're accepting unequal household labor in exchange for, again, not rocking the boat, not having to have a hard conversation, not feeling like you're asking for too much, or, another advantage to that for not saying anything and just accepting it is that most of the time we're looked at as being a selfless, good wife, good mother, whatever that is. Let's talk about appearance. appearance, the patriarchal bargain in appearance is dressing or presenting yourself to fall in line with the male gaze, to conform to male gaze standards because it feels safer, right? Because it feels safer than being ignored or being shamed, being stereotyped, any of the other things that could come with the risk of dressing how you want to dress. And this is such a big topic. And the reason that I wanted to expand specifically on this one, as I'm talking about how to decenter men, is these are hard to break. These bargains are hard to break because it's the same as how I talk about all the chapters and how to stop feeling like shit. They work until they don't. They work in the short term. You do get safety. You do get love. You do, maybe you get an economic advantage or you have a smoother relationship, right? They work. And it is slowly but surely at the expense of your wholeness, of your selfhood, right? And they're hard to break because we see them everywhere. Everyone's doing it. They are reinforced in the media. It's reinforced in our current family. It was probably very much the norm in our family of origin, and it continues to be so, even though we're adults. It gets probably reinforced in workplace dynamics, even other women who've internalized the bargain, which is most of us, right? We see it everywhere. So I want to circle back again and just tie this back to self-abandonment, because I really want you to see how this ties into that. Every patriarchal bargain has the same sort of like underlying transaction. I think that's probably what I want to call it. It has the same underlying transaction. So it says, I'll abandon myself, or I'll abandon part of myself in order to stay acceptable to men. And I know that's a huge generalization, the staying acceptable to men part, but really what it says is I'll abandon part of myself in order to uphold this bargain, in order to give patriarchy what it wants. And that's for men to stay at the center, men to stay on the pedestal and the helm, and we are the people that revolve around them. We are the object, they are the subject. When you break a bargain, so let's say you say no, you set a boundary, you express yourself, you grow or evolve away from your male partner, your relationship is at risk, could be at risk, right? And then that means that maybe your possible safety is at risk. Your nervous system is for sure going to tell you that your safety is at risk if your relationship is at risk. I want to briefly say many years ago, I think it was probably around 2016 or 2017, probably 2017-ish, I started to deep dive into this particular term and just the whole theory in general about how we center men. And I, at the time, made a slight adjustment in how I behaved in my marriage. And I just decided, I wonder what would happen if I just practiced putting myself first and not making him the sun. What if I just practice, if I'm the sun and I just assume that everyone else orbits around me? And so that came with some examples of some things that I did, and they were very small. And I'm not going to get into the details of the things that I did, but please trust me, they were very small. And I heard about it. I definitely heard about it. The other person noticed and took it in a way that sort of surprised me, but didn't surprise me. The other person definitely felt the change and asked about it. That part kind of surprised me, that the small things that I did were enough to cause a little bit of a small tsunami, I guess. And it was interesting. And as you probably can guess, it was kind of one of the things that was the beginning of a thread that I started to pull. All right. So there's two more terms that I'm going to just quickly go over. And if you want to do some research on your own. Just do a quick Google search on what these mean, if it might help you understand this a little bit more. So there's the term compulsory heterosexuality, also known as comphet. You may have heard that term. Adrienne Rich argues that institutions and norms pressure women, and they almost always assume that women will orient their lives around men emotionally, sexually, materially. That's a word, isn't it? Materialistically? No, materially. It is the air we breathe, it's the water we swim in, and it is absolutely not an individual flaw. So compulsory heterosexuality is another one. And then another term is self-silencing. Also, it's talked about as relational bargaining. And so Dana Jack's research shows that many women, and this one is, Dr. Gabor Mate talks about this too in his work and cites the same research that Dana Jack does. But the research shows that many women suppress their needs, suppress their anger, suppresses more quote unquote difficult emotions in order to keep connection, which directly correlates with depression and health risks. I am saying that slowly and with reverence because I mean it. This particular research pains me, partly because I have lived it. And I truly believe that my chronic illness was a consequence, was a price that I paid for self-silencing and for the relational bargaining, for the patriarchal bargain that I accepted and didn't know for many years. And then I finally did know about it, started to make some changes. And at the same time, I had reached my limit. This was in my late 40s and my body started to fall apart. Basically, my body was talking to me saying, we can't do this anymore. And I believe that happens to a lot of women. The self-silencing and the relational bargaining that we do can tend to have pretty big consequences for us. It's self-abandonment. It's self-abandonment truly in action. And so there's another term called relational autonomy that I will talk about in the next episode, the next solo episode, because that one is about the solutions. How do we stop doing this and not blow up our whole lives? That's what I want to teach. Oh, Lord. Okay. We take one more quick break. When we get back, I'm going to talk about the cost of all of this. We'll be right back.
Did you know that parents rank teaching financial literacy as the toughest life skill? That's where Greenlight comes in, the debit card and money app made for families. With Greenlight, you can send money quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and track spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn how to earn, save, and spend responsibly, while parents have peace of mind knowing smart money habits are being built. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Spotify.
Netflix has a new monstrous story to tell. In 1950s Wisconsin, Ed Gein lived quietly on a decaying farm, hiding a house of horrors so gruesome it would redefine the American nightmare. Driven by isolation, psychosis, and an all-consuming obsession with his mother, he committed crimes that would haunt Hollywood for decades. The third and most harrowing installment of Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan's anthology series. Watch Monster, the Ed Gein story, streaming now only on Netflix.
Tonight, turn down the noise of the day and focus on the rest with AGZ, the nightly drink for winding down and resting up. New from AG1. AGZ supports your body's natural sleep cycle with clinically studied key herbs, adaptogens, and minerals in amounts supported by research. And no melatonin, helping you wake feeling rested. Wind down, rest up with AGZ. Learn more at drinkagz.com.
All right, the cost of centering men. There's an emotional cost for sure. What I've mostly been talking about, the loss of yourself, a sense of confusion in terms of how do we get to wholeness, and confusion over our own identity when we don't have, when the goal is kind of over there, when it's through the lens of someone else or a system, then that is a huge emotional cost and confusion over our identity. And also, I think that the chronic anxiety, the chronic anxious feeling of, am I enough? Do I measure up? I think that when we have to always measure that against a system like patriarchy, then how can we ever feel enough? The whole worthiness conversation is really rooted in, can we see ourselves through our own lens? Can we see ourselves through expectations that we put on ourselves that have nothing to do with the most important man in our life, that have nothing to do with what patriarchy accepts of us, have nothing to do with what capitalism wants from us, and just us? First getting to that, are you able to look at what it is that you want and the kind of person that you want to be through a lens that is just your own? Then you're having the worthiness conversation. It's layered. It's incredibly layered, and it becomes an emotional cost. And then there are the resentments. Oh my God, we didn't even get into resentment. Resentment is a thing that I believe if you ask somebody, who do you have resentments towards right now? If they really think about it, they will tell you. We all tend to have resentments, whether they are currently pending or past pending. Resentment is what resentment can do. It will always point you to a value that's being stepped on. Something about your own identity, something about your own values is being stepped on. And quite possibly, there is a conversation that needs to be had if you have a resentment. And then we end up not knowing how to have these conversations, or we're too afraid of the emotional fallout that will happen from the conversations. So we don't have them. Sometimes we deem that the other person, often our husband, his feelings are more important. So we don't have the conversation and we keep the resentment. Resentment's a big one. All right, I'm going to stop though, because I don't want to get too far into it, because I'm going to talk about solutions next time. So another cost is how this impacts our relationships. It's a relational cost that we have. When we center men, there is an imbalance in the relationship. We are most likely doing more emotional labor. Our needs come second, and that creates a power imbalance. Also, it's a relational cost because when we push back, we, at the very least, risk a hard conversation. We risk things just like discomfort or tension. We risk being disliked by someone else. Someone is angry with us. They might withdraw. That's a pretty big cost. Or sometimes in relationships, if you push back, you might get silence, you might get stonewalling from a partner, depending if that's their MO. It's a huge relational cost for most of us, if not all of us. Then there's the cultural cost, sort of the systemic cost, really. It's the internalized oppression. It's how we police ourselves. It's how we tell ourselves that we are too needy, that we shouldn't bring that up because we just asked them about it a week ago. We police ourselves by making sure that we are perhaps dressing a certain way for someone else. That's a systemic cost. And also, even at a sort of a bigger lens, looking at the barriers to having a voice, having a platform, women's leadership, that's a cultural and systemic cost. All right. So in summary, my hope is that I explained the kind of why we do it, why we center men, why we engage in these patriarchal bargains. It is not that we as women are weak or that we choose badly. It's not. It's that the system has trained us that these bargains are the safest, most convenient, most direct route to love, to resources, to belonging, to connection, to everything that we want as humans, as women, as people living whatever country you're in right now listening to this. That's why we do it. And my hope is that walking away from this, you see what I'm saying is that centering men is a survival mechanism. It's not a pathology. You're not broken. You're not doing it wrong. You didn't make a mistake or a wrong turn. Okay. You're not wrong for doing it. You were smart enough to find a strategy that has helped you survive thus far. If you are someone who is looking around and realizing how much you're doing it. And I think what I want to leave you with is that you're at choice at this point. Because the same bargain that once, and I'm going to speak for myself here when I say this in the way that I word it, the same bargain that once gave me safety suddenly became a bargain that was too expensive. The cost was not worth what I got from it. The cost that it gave to me was not worth what I got from it. And then for me, I had to make the decision of, am I going to make choices and engage in behaviors that are going to push up against this? Am I going to break the bargain? And I did. By me leaving my marriage, really both of them, but more specifically, this more recent one was me stopping the participation. And I also want to be very clear that I'm not making my former husband wrong for this at all. We all grow up in the same system and play by the quote unquote rules that were handed to us. So I'm not mad about that. I mean, yay for us for playing by the rules and doing what we were quote unquote supposed to do. But I can tell you that when I stopped orbiting another person in my relationship, I stopped making them the sun and even started just asking myself the question, what if I made myself the sun and he made himself the sun? Could we change things? I essentially broke the bargain and the cost was exposed. The cost was also very much exposed to me. And I also paid a price in other ways too. So centering men is not about blaming men. It's not about blaming any individual. It's not about blaming anybody's husband, dad, ex-husband, ex, baby daddy, brother, nobody. Centering men is about naming a pattern. Okay, that's it. And next week, well, actually in 2 weeks, I'm going to walk you through how to start decentering. What kind of behaviors should we look into doing? What kind of work needs to happen? How do we reclaim our voices? How do we reclaim ourselves? How do we set boundaries? And my invitation for you is to maybe look up a couple of these terms, see how they might be playing out and probably are playing out in your own life. Take a little inventory and maybe think about some small changes that you might want to make. Or just start journaling on it and think about, maybe ask yourself that question that I asked myself, what would happen if I stopped making someone else the sun in my solar system and made it me? Would I think differently? Would I behave differently? Would I react differently? What choices would be different that I make? How would my life look better? How would my life look worse? Those types of big existential questions. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your time so much. Please share these episodes on Instagram or Facebook. You can always tag me, Hey Andrea Owen. I love to see them. I will always repost them. If I see them in time, I usually do. And I also answer all the DMs that you guys send me, and I appreciate those so much. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey, did you know there's free secret podcast episodes waiting for you that are not part of my regular podcast feed? Yes, AndreaOwen.com/free. And you just sign up. You get a link sent to you. It's very secret. It's like a secret club. We don't have a secret handshake. Don't worry about that. But it's these motivating podcast episodes that I made for you. They're under 20 minutes each. There's 3 of them. They're for wherever you are in your life. So head on over there and grab them. They range from really supporting you and seeing you where you are and being compassionate, all the way to giving you a giant kick in your ass and telling you how amazing and gorgeous and phenomenal you are. So andreaowen.com/free and get your hands on that free podcast feed.